Good evening, everyone. I am Angel from Lima in Peru. This is my channel, Reading Means Life. Today, I want to show you this book, Peripheral History, the history of the Canto Chico Shanty town. It was published in 2007 by Peruvian teacher of social sciences José Carlos Arenales and Peruvian anthropologist Wilmer Mejía. The squatter area of Canto Chico, whose name appeared about 50 years ago, is located in San Juan del Urigancho, the most populous district in the country, in the northeastern part of the metropolitan area of Lima. The book in the index explains the different aspects that this area has. From the geographical aspect, let's start with that. Canto Chico is located in the western part of the district at 226 meters above sea level, surrounded by hill slopes. There is an ecosystem called lomas, which means foothills. Its climate is subtropical hot, and there is no endemic flora, though it appears especially in winter. Its fauna is slowly disappearing owing to urban expansion. About the archaeological aspect that starts in page 13, there have been human settlements for 10,000 years in the Canto Grande ravine, based on the research by the Ruricancho Cultural Institute, especially by the archaeologist Julio Abandollaque. Templo 15 de Enero is a temple, a pre-Incan structure. It's very important. There were pilgrims going there, um, especially to the Apu Cerro Colorado. Cerro Colorado, which means Red Hill, at 2,240 meters above sea level. There are also geoglyphs surrounding the area. There are approximately 40 geoglyphs out of 87 geographical sites in general. Um, there were also canals as well. Some of them were being used even in the 1970s. Imagine that. Another temple, as well as 15 de Enero, a temple which can be mentioned is the Ascarons one, which was totally destroyed, unfortunately. Many sites have had the same fate. San Jerónimo Hill shows some settlements made in stone. What has shocked me is to learn that some religious groups have been plundering and destroying those sites. There is a settlement at the very summit, which is at 756 meters above sea level. San Jerónimo was considered the guardian mountain of the area, which is why the Spanish conquistadors chose a Catholic name. The fact that there was some Wari influence does not mean, according to the authors, that the Wari ruled the area. Though I can find some theory or speculation. I would have wanted them to prove that, okay, or to show some documents about that. There was some Ichma influence as well during the late Intermediate, prior to the Inca invasion of the area. Naturally, the most important place, since this book is about the Canto Chico area, for being located in the shanty town itself, is Huaca Canto Chico. Just about 20% of the original buildings remain, unfortunately, since not only Canto Chico Shantytown is there, but others, such as Nuevo Peru, Cahuachi, and Sagrado Madero. The first settlers found tombs, pre-Incan tombs, but they threw them, as if those artifacts were mere rubbish. To worsen this, between 1965 and 1967, the National Housing Board, which would become the Ministry of Housing decades later, promoted the destruction of archaeological sites so as to prevent slums from settling near or next to the city center. Thus, heavy vehicles were used and the army, the local council, and the settlers worked together. Nowadays, the site is being affected since there is no wall surrounding or protecting it, which enables youths to throw stones and drug addicts to make it their haven. There is a considerable amount of garbage, so what would be a resource for local economy and public adornment, generating local identity and creating jobs, is there, still waiting. as in many other areas of Peru, unfortunately. The historical aspect starts with on page, let me check, on page 33. Well, everybody knows that the native population was decimated during the conquest, so the Spaniards must have found few inhabitants in the area of Lurigancho. The encomienda, which is a type of communal slavery, enabled the Spaniards to control the native workforce. An encomienda in Lurigancho was granted to Hernán Sánchez in 1535. Other owners were Francisco de Chaves, his widow, and Jerónimo de Loaiza. It is curious that even now there is a nobility title, the Earl of San Juan de Lurigancho, which of course is valid in Spain solely, not here in Peru. The Indian Reducción, or Reduction, was a native town of San Juan Bautista de Lurigancho, was named like this in order to control the Indians in the Catholic religion, and its function was to control the payment of taxes that the natives were obliged to pay to the Spanish authorities. The reduction of San Juan Bautista de Lurigancho also has a Catholic name, which links to the previous idea, okay, of controlling the Indians ideologically. There are another group of people who are mentioned here, the goat herders of Jicamarca. Jicamarca is an area in the very Andes, okay, near Lurigancho. They were also an important group of people. They went to the lower part of the valley periodically, but many gradually started to settle there. There was mining as well, which, with the presence of tunnels as evidence. Huaqueros, or plunderers of archaeological sites, have been common in the area. Although there was a project to protect the site, ignorance and greed prevails. In the 20th century, there was a slum called Cantagallo, near the historical center. They were relocated in the 1960s, some of them in Caja de Agua, in San Juan de Lurigancho, near the city center, and others in Canto Chico. The National Housing Board allowed the destruction of some sectors of the Huaca. Since the settlers had different backgrounds and origins, so disunity was and is a common characteristic. The squatter area was founded on May the 30th, 1966, and even since its foundation it had to deal with problems. Documents and a television set were stolen, two rival groups of leaders, there were bandits around, and so others. As years passed, there were more inhabitants. The community center was invaded by a family, then by a religious group, and when the market was built, the best part of the Huaca, the archaeological site in Canto Chico, was knocked down, was leveled. According to the authors, violence, gangs, and delinquency were brought from Cantagallo, which sounds polemic to me. I would like maybe to know to what extent that was true. The Shanty was infamous for being dangerous during the 1980s and 1990s. The chicha parties were one of the main resources or sources of amusement. Those parties in which that tropical music, chicha, was played proved a place that allowed violence. Fortunately, not everything is bad. The new generations want to get rid of old practices. As an example, they intend to get into a formal system of both land owning and economic activities. About other aspects can be mentioned on page 58, the role of the Catholic Church and other religious groups. Sport organization, it is impressive how being a footballer gives status and enables some men to become political leaders later. However, the practice of football lacks professionalism, and the players hardly stand out beyond the neighborhood or the district leagues. The museum had more visitors from other areas from the neighborhood itself, which is an indicator of how little importance is placed on commitment to promote and protect the local heritage. There is a list of famous neighbors and settlers, the founders, as Maria Felix Fuerte, a woman who was the daughter of a goat herder, and other people on pages 63, 64 until 67. On page 68 there are conclusions. Some conclusions can be that, let me check, that there is an area, a stagnant area, where improvisation is a rule, unfortunately. Academic level is minimal amongst the local leaders. The inhabitants show a lack of interest in the problems of that sector, which is evident in the low attendance to regular meetings. The Huaca, the archaeological site, has some potential to transform Canto Chico into a dynamic area, since it possesses archaeological, historical, and cultural value, but local awareness and identity have not been fully spread yet, as in other areas. The authors mention other places that before neglected archaeological sites like Puruchuco, Guayamarca, Pucllana, and here in Canto Chico, that is kind of waiting. Football also is another conclusion, means social climbing, but other sports and spare activities should be promoted as well. Well, I am the opinion that Mr. José Carlos Arenales, who is here, he's one of the writers. He's a teacher of social science by the National University Federico Villarreal. And also Mr. Wilmer Mejía, you can find him here, okay, the other author, an anthropologist by the same university, Federico Villarreal. They have succeeded in going beyond the limits of Canto Chico, which is just a neighborhood, a squatter area, to show us a general vision of the history of the district, San Juan del Lurigancho, coming back to the squatter area not only to describe its many aspects, geographical, historical, social, etc., but call for some change that might improve the living conditions of its inhabitants. As the residents in San Juan del Lurigancho, they live in this district, the same as me, and as being committed professionals, so they face the problem this area has and also see and project optimism, but optimism is incomplete without awareness. So that is what this book has achieved, to create awareness and to set an important brick, in building a local identity, which is so much needed in this area of Lima. Well, that's all. I really recommend buying this book by Editorial Académica Española. It was published in Germany in 2017, and it was also promoted last year. So if you have the opportunity, buy it. I really recommend it. They have promoted that investigation, that research of local history, which is something that I studied. I recall studying that at university when I studied history, and it's a topic sometimes neglected by local historians or local social scientists. I really recommend it, so that's all for now. Bye bye.